Howdy and welcome to another edition of Postcard from Moorhead. I'm Larry Dixon, and what are we doing today? Karen Yoakum. Karen, this is for you. You requested that I do dirty rice or rice dressing. I'd never heard it called rice dressing before, but we're doing dirty rice today. So what goes into my version of dirty rice? Well, let's see. I got 1 pound of Italian sausage, 1/4 cup of Worcestershire sauce, a small red pepper and a small green pepper, a rib of celery, and all of this is going to be diced. I got two short sticks of celery here. The recipe calls for 4 cloves of garlic. Lenore or I are huge fans of garlic, so I'm going to only use 3. 2 teaspoons of Creole seasoning. I tasted of it last night, and boy, that's some fresh stuff. Woo! 2 teaspoons is going to add some kick to it. 2 bay leaves, 1/4 cup of chopped parsley. So I take these Italian sausages, split the casing down the center, and peels apart pretty easy. So that's got my 1 pound of sausage. I'm going to chop it up, and then I'm going to fry it, and then we're going to start adding these other ingredients slowly. So I'm going to set this to the side. A couple of things I did not mention that goes into this recipe is 1.5 cups of rice and 5 cups of chicken broth. So one of these containers is 4 cups, and so I'm going to use 1/4 of a cup, or 1/4 of this container, to get my 5 cups out of that. So I need to chop up my pepper. Now the recipe says it needs to be minced, so I'm going to take the ribs out and we'll mince those. So I've got this handy dandy little machine here that it slices stuff really thin, and it also dices. The recipe calls for a small sweet onion. So I'm using just half of a large onion. And so we're going to dice this. So there is the half of my onion that's diced up. Got a few large pieces in there. There they go. So there's my diced onion. Going to put it in a container separate because this does not go in at exactly the same time as the peppers do. So now we're going to dice our red pepper. Well, obviously the little dicing machine didn't work real well with the peppers. Next is the celery ribs. Now the last thing I need to prep on this end is the garlic. I'm just going to kind of dice it up there a little bit. And in it goes. So the next step we're going to fry up. We're going to go to the stove and fry up our Italian sausage. And we're going to add all of these ingredients, and we're going to make dirty rice for Karen. We're frying up our Italian sausage. And once we get it fried up, and I did not add any oil or anything to this because this meat is making its own oil. So the next step, once I get this fried up, then I'm going to add 1/4 of a cup of Worcestershire sauce. That'll be the next step. So while this is frying up, you know, in a lot of recipes, people say they have the old-fashioned, the original dirty rice or rice dressing recipes. Well, I did a little bit of research, and I don't think anyone today is doing the original version of dirty rice. The earliest version of this dish traces back to the antebellum era of southern Louisiana in the late 1700s. And it falls under the category of soul food. So it was during this period that the individuals working the slave trade brought crops from Africa and captives with the knowledge to cultivate them in the colonies. These crops included sweet potato, okra, peanuts, kidney beans, lima beans, watermelon, and rice. So that's what we're doing today, is a version of dirty rice. So now the captive farmers, at that point they were captive farmers from the coast of West Africa, they included rice in many of their diets. They were brought to Louisiana and enslaved for their ability to cultivate the crop in the marshes and bayous of Louisiana. The plentiful nature of rice made it an inexpensive commodity allotted to these enslaved people. The limited foods for the enslaved people included corn, beans, sorghum, succotash, and greens, and rice, because they were plentiful, it was cheap, and it's what the slaves were allowed to eat. Now, the enslaved people were also given the undesirable cuts of meat that would otherwise be thrown out by the plantation owners. These meats generally included intestines, the neck, feet, head, ears, the rib cage, tail, and tongue of hogs and cows. So these were the options for these slaves to survive on. They had to adapt and create meals to feed their families. And I said, nobody is doing the original dirty rice because we don't have the hog's head and those undesirable meats. The rice, combined with the organ meat provided by the slave owners, this was the primary components of dirty rice. And once again, it would be the heart, livers, kidneys, gizzard, ribs, hog feet. That's what the livestock on the plantation was afforded to them. The meat would be cooked down and then chopped into fine pieces while the rice cooked. Then the rice would be mixed in with this meat mixture, making a broth, and that's what gave it its dirty appearance, was the meat that they were using. So it's starting to look like our Italian sausage, and Italian sausage was not on the menu for those enslaved persons. Nicely, I'm going to add this 1/4 cup of Worcestershire sauce. I'm going to stir it around. Boy, that Worcestershire sauce is really giving it some sweet aroma. Next, we're going to add our chicken broth. So this one box is 4 cups of chicken broth. That looks like a lot of liquid, but it is going to cook down. And to get that 1/5 cup of chicken broth, I'm going to measure it out. There we go. That's 5 cups of chicken broth. I'm going to bring it back up to a boil. Now, if you want to add salt and pepper, you can, but I prefer to add the salt a little bit later, not at this point. Don't want to get too much salt. You can put more in, but you can't take it out. Now that we've added the chicken broth, next is the Creole seasoning. Stir that in. Our rice is going to go in next. Going to add our vegetables. Throw in a couple of bay leaves. And wait for this to come back up to a nice boil. As you can see, it has returned to a hard boil. And now it's at this point I'm going to turn the heat down to a simmer. And now the last thing I'm going to add is the onions. And doing it this way, this may leave my onions with just a little bit of crunch, not all mushy. So dump that in. Give it a stir, make sure nothing's sticking to the bottom. Now we're going to let it simmer with the lid on for about 25 minutes or so. I'm going to check it about every 5 or 10 minutes to make sure nothing is sticking to the bottom. Well, it's been 25 minutes, so and I've stirred it some. Let's take a look and see what we've got. Looks like it's still a little bit moist, but may not be perfection, but I'm ready to eat. It needs to sit for a minute or so, but even at that, Lenore, come in here. That is good stuff. I could have used a little more Creole seasoning. Mm-hmm. We can still add that. Mm-hmm. But that is mighty tasty. Mm-hmm. Karen, thanks for the idea of doing dirty rice. May not be perfect, it's still a little bit wet, but man, is it tasty. And it's some of that moisture will continue to evaporate. We've got leftovers from yesterday's Father's Day, and we got dressing, mashed potato, potato salad, meatloaf, deviled eggs, and Lenore's world famous cornbread. Look at that. That is some more good eating. Lenore, let's give this dirty rice another try. All right. Well, we both like a little more heat, and that's pretty potent stuff, Lenore. Oh, that's perfect. This has been a postcard from Moorhead. I'm Larry Dixon. Thanks, Karen, for the idea of the dirty rice. We'll see you soon. Postcard from Moorhead. Be sure to hit that like, subscribe button, and share this with your friends. It really helps the channel. Oh, and we're having L81, a local Kentucky drink. See you soon.